Hi, I'm going to make a couple videos to help support you as you work through today's classwork, writing equations in slope-intercept form. This first video is going to be about slides 2 and slide 3 and slide 4, which is the big part of the review from last trimester. So if you're one of the people in this class that did not do all of this class last trimester, I hope this video will be really helpful for you. That's my goal. Okay, here we go. I'm going to make it a little bigger so I have more screen. All right, here's a situation we looked at last trimester. You and your friends go to the state fair. It costs $6 to go to the fair and $2 each time you go on a ride. X represents the number of rides you go on. Y represents the total cost. Use the sketch tools to show where you see the slope of this relationship in the table, the graph, and the equation, and answer the questions. Okay. So the slope, remember the slope is a single number that describes the angle of the line and also the direction of the line. In other words, is it angled up from left to right, or is it angled down from left to right? Going up from left to right is a positive slope. This is a positive slope example. Going down from left to right would be a negative slope. So how do we see the slope on this diagram? One of the things that we learned last trimester is that slope is the ratio rise over run. So in this case, this is the rise, and the rise from 8 to 10 is going up 2. And then the run goes from 1 to 2. That's an increase of 1. So the rise is plus 2. The run is plus 1. So that's the slope. The slope is 2 over 1. Or just 2, it's fine. Because 2 divided by 1 equals 2. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing with the table, and we should see the same slope because it's the same relationship. It's just a different representation. I suggest that you always start by looking at the change in x. This is x, so this side is change in x. Change in x. Remember delta. That triangle means delta. It's a Greek letter delta, and that means change in. So every time you see that little triangle symbol, just say change in, and there you go. So change in x is going up by 1 every time, so change in x is going to be 1. Change in y is going up by 2 every time. So the slope is the change in y divided by the change in x. Change in y is plus 2. Change in x is plus 1. So we get the same slope, which makes sense because it's the same relationship. We should get the same slope. All right, in the equation, what we learned last trimester, and you might be learning this today, what we learned last trimester is that you can write the equation of a line in this format: y equals the slope times the x number plus the y-intercept. So any value, whatever the value is, it's being multiplied by the x. The coefficient, this is called the coefficient. The coefficient is the number being multiplied by a variable. So the coefficient of x is 2. That means the slope is 2. Okay. So now, if I give you an equation, or if I give you a table, or if I give you a graph, you should be able to analyze that representation and figure out what the slope is. So the slope of this relationship, slope is 2. In the graph, you do rise over run. In the table, you do change in y over change in x. You could also, that little triangle symbol means change in. And I hope that you see, if we do this over and over and over, you don't want to keep writing the words change in. You just want to do the little triangle. In the equation, it's the coefficient. Oops, I spelled that weird. How do you spell that? The coefficient of x. In other words, it's 2 times x. In this context, the slope of 2 represents that each ride costs $2. Ching. All right, next. Same situation. Now we're thinking about y-intercepts. The y-intercept, if you imagine with your mind or use a highlighter to show, this is the y-axis. So then the y-intercept is this point right there. That's the y-intercept, which is the point 0, 6, because that's where the line crosses the y-axis. I don't know why it made a little dot there. So this means that the b value is 6, because it's the number right there. That seems confusing to me. Let's change it to green. Let's change it to skinny. The b value is going to be 6. All right. So in a table, or sorry, in a graph, the way you find the y-intercept is that's the point here where the line intercepts the y-axis. On a table, the y-intercept is where x equals 0. So this means that 6, why does it do that? B equals 6. So the 6 is my y-intercept. And in the equation, y equals the slope times x plus b. So whatever number is in that position, that's your b. So the b is 6. All right, so the y-intercept of this relationship for this relationship is 0, 6. So the value of b is 6. In the graph, it's where the line crosses the y-axis. Okay, in the graph, it's where the line crosses the y-axis. In the table, it's where x is 0, and in the equation, it's the plus part. And in this context, the plus 6 represents the amount you pay to get into the fair before without any rides. I hope you find that helpful. Okay. So then what you need to remember, by looking at the problems that we did last trimester, you can see that one way to represent the linear equation is in slope-intercept form. This form is called slope-intercept form because the slope is m and it's right in the equation, and the b is the intercept and it's right in the equation, so that's why it's called slope-intercept form. M represents the slope or the rate of change. B represents the y-intercept, the initial value or starting point. If you are given a representation of a linear relationship, you can write the equation for that relationship in slope-intercept form by finding the slope m and the y-intercept b and substituting them into the slope-intercept form of the linear equation shown above. Substituting means replacing. So essentially you take y equals mx plus b and you replace the m with the slope value and you replace the b with the y-intercept value, and then you've got a linear equation. I hope you find that helpful. If this is knowledge that you will need to be successful this trimester, so if you are currently feeling like you are still struggling to understand this, that's okay. But we need to get you caught up. So come see me during office hours or make a different time. But this is like, we'll get there, but we got to do the work. Okay, I will talk to you soon, and I hope you find this helpful.